Welcome to Behind the Scenes. I'm your host, Hector Montalvo. This show is dedicated to asking some tough questions, bring you their responses, and we let you decide. Joining us here today at our MCTV studios, we welcome once again back to the show Mr. Donald Schultz. Mr. Schultz, welcome to Behind the Scenes.
Well, thank you for having me back, Hector.
Mr. Schultz, you've been pushing very hard on having cameras in the courtroom. With all the articles that have been read lately, we have the Chief Justice of the court, we have drinking on the job that was reported on WBZ. Why do you think it's so important to have cameras in the courtroom?
Well, for the most part, Hector, 99% of the people in a court district can never attend a courtroom proceeding. And that's just the district courts. You then have superior courts, which take in even more people. So that 99% is even a greater a greater amount of people. And if you have a Massachusetts appeals court or the Supreme Judicial Court, they handle the entire state. And most people cannot take and get in to see what's going on in those courtroom proceedings. How do we make a determination then, Hector, if we should have a judge removed from office if they're acting badly or unprofessionally, if we can't get to see them? What good are our courts? What good is our right to have these people removed if we can't see what they're doing?
Now, we had Senator Stephen Bedore on our show a couple of weeks ago, and he indicated that cameras already exist in the courtroom. I know that courtrooms that I've watched, I haven't seen any cameras in there. Have you seen any cameras in the courts?
No, it's interesting. Just recently, Boston University was given some grant money, and they're trying out cameras in the courtroom at the Quincy District Court. The only other way to get a camera in the courtroom is to invite in a news crew, or if you could beg the judge to bring in your own video camera and video record the proceedings. Now, if you cannot afford to bring in a camera in that, if you want transcripts of the courtroom proceeding, get ready to dish out a few $1,000s, because you have a pensioned court stenographer who is actually taking down all the notes, and then they will give you an official transcript. Well, for $1, you can buy a DVD disc, and you can record maybe 2 hours of a proceeding on there. And for most people, that'd be more than sufficient. Now, we have this technology, Hector. Why can't we use it? Why are we still in buggy whip courts? We have courtrooms that I was in the Superior Court in Dedham, and they were trying a police officer there. The attorneys for the police officer were handing around, they drew on a piece of paper and they're handing it around to the 16 jurors. This was in the same courtroom where Sacco and Vanzetti were tried. No television screen, no projection display, no nothing. It's like, wait a second, this is ridiculous. And furthermore, if the jurors, when they went in to take and deliberate, they would have to call for the stenographer's notes, and you'd have to pass them around and read them. Why can't they just turn on a television and see what the testimony was?
Good point. Now, I know that this show has put in multiple requests to record in different courthouses. Some judges have been open and transparent by allowing us to go into the courts and record. However, when we submit our request to Judge Mary Manzi from the Lawrence Probate Court, we get no response or response with no signature, no court letterhead or anything like that. Why do you think that it's such hard, people have a hard time? I mean, we know audio is public record. What crime are we committing by having a camera pick up just the face of a judge?
Well, you want to take and you want to see not only the face of the judge, but you want to take and see some of the potential witnesses, and you want to see the attorneys as they are acting in court. Some people have problems with attorneys. Try submitting a complaint to the Board of Bar Overseers and see how far your complaint gets. Some people have problems with the personnel that work at the court. Try submitting a complaint to the Commission on Judicial Conduct. Judges, everybody, the same thing. How am I to take and say, hey, I believe this judge or this person treated me wrongly in court, but I don't have anything else other than my word, and who are they going to believe? A citizen or some public servant? Of course, the public servant wins out. Now, when a judge takes and refuses to completely answer a complaint or a request, if you are not violating somebody's rights, they should allow you to take and video record. The judge it's incumbent upon the judge to take and state specifically why you cannot do it and why you are violating rights. In other words, the defects in your request. In other words, Your Honor, if I correct those defects, do I now get to video? Yes, you do. The intent has to be that the right is to be exercised. It cannot be subverted or injuriously restrained. If your intent is to act as a public sector under the First Amendment, to video record and then to show it here to the folks out in Methuen and that, you have that right. The judge is supposed to bend over backwards. But as you've come up against it, blanket no, I'm not saying why, I don't care, tough luck, take me to court. Wait a second, I'm a judge, I have immunity.
Do judges have immunity?
They certainly do.
And who gave them that immunity?
Well, this goes back to 1868 when an attorney in Boston sued a judge. And the case is Randall versus Brigham, and it's 74 U.S. 523. And part of the ruling, it says, in England, the king's judges occupy this position. As sovereign, the judges act as the sovereign. The judges of the court of general jurisdiction, to them is delegated the whole judicial power of the sovereign, and they are responsible to the sovereign alone. The courts of King's Bench or the courts of Queen's Bench. So, magically, the authority of the King of England has transferred through the Constitution to the judges in Massachusetts and all over this nation. Now, I've asked before, can you show me in the Constitution where the judges get this immunity? And they say, oh, it's not there, it's in the courts of King's Bench. Okay, where are the courts of King's Bench in the Constitution? Well, they're not there either. Well, wait a second, we got to get somewhere. Where does this magically come from? And it's a court ruling from 1868. Judges have immunity. You cannot sue a judge, even if the judge acts in violation of the Constitution.
So they can deny you your due process?
They can deny you anything they want because they are acting in place of the sovereign. I thought in this nation the people were the sovereigns. And this galls me, Hector, like you can't imagine. And most Americans who are sitting at home watching this show, they have no idea that judges carry this immunity from the courts of King's Bench. And I hope that you'll carry on your website this actual court ruling, and they can read it. Law is not rocket science. I've met many judges and attorneys. They don't, power up to a bachelor's degree in engineering. It's just words on paper. Anybody should be able to understand what a court ruling is and how it applies to the Constitution.
Now, are you familiar with the SJC Rule 119, which basically allows any person to submit that request to the judge? Now, under SJC Rule 119, it's to the judge's discretion whether or not they will allow cameras in the courtroom. What harm are we doing by broadcasting litigants? Can we keep the litigants private and still focus on recording the judges? Are we still violating the litigants' rights to a fair trial, to due process and everything else?
In actuality, we're not. I could see in some cases, juveniles, maybe some personal family matters and such, that you could have the video camera there, but you would carry just only the audio. But in most other instances, I would assume that the public would want to take and see what's going on in the courtroom because they could be there the next day. And you want to see if the police officers, hey, wait a second, Officer Smith, boy, he's arrested 100 people this month, and he's only gotten 2 convictions. The other 98 people have walked off. Is he arresting the wrong people? Or Officer Jones, he's arrested 50 people, and 47 have been convicted. Hey, that guy gets me my money's worth, but Smith doesn't. We want to see things like this. We want to take and also see how the attorneys act. I've seen attorneys in court, Hector, that would scare you as to their incompetence. I know more about the law than they do.
It's interesting. I like to bring in Judge Mary Manzi, who sits in the Lawrence Probate Court. Judge Manzi, welcome to the show, Your Honor. Your Honor, let me ask you, Can you tell us why you've denied every request that we've submitted to you to record in the actual courtroom, Your Honor? Your Honor, Your Honor, you can answer. This is not courtroom 10, Your Honor. I guess the judge doesn't want to answer. I wonder if the judge has been in communications with the surrogate for Governor Deval Patrick. Your Honor, have you been in communications with Governor Deval Patrick? I mean, he played the same role. Okay. Well, Mr. Schultz, I think the judge does not want to answer any of questions right now. Can you tell me, you mentioned bill of address. Can you tell me what is the benefit of a public bill of address?
All right, a bill of address is the only means that we have as citizens for actually taking and speaking out against a judge who has acted improperly. Now the thing is, judges hold their offices during periods of good behavior. All right, that tells me that their standards that we hold them to is so vast. I mean, not that he doesn't cut his, that they cut their grass every week or something like that, but that a judge acts professionally when they are contacted by a Hector Montalvo or a Don Schwartz. I submitted a request to have my courtroom proceedings videotaped in the courtroom of Judge Robert Scheiber, and he said no. And I says, very good, why? Silence, just like Judge Manzi. Your Honor, you have to tell me why. Whose rights am I violating by video recording my own proceedings? What they didn't want was to show that the Stoughton police were pleading the Fifth Amendment as to why they arrested me. I never got to face my accusers. Is that a denial of due process? You better believe it. But the bill of address, I've done a bill of address against Judge Scheiber. I've helped against another justice over at the Quincy Court. But it is our ways, it's a public document. Because if you take and submit a complaint to the Commission on Judicial Conduct, that is a privileged complaint that nobody else can see. And they can hold you liable if you speak out and say, oh, I've submitted a complaint against Judge so-and-so to the Commission on Judicial Conduct. You can't say that. You can't even, if you submit a complaint to the Board of Bar Overseers, that is privileged also. Excuse me, Hector, can you tell me why we have to take and keep complaints against public servants who are receiving taxpayer monies privileged? Where is that in the Constitution? Oh, right next to the immunity. Got it.
Now, what about acting under the color of law? What's the interpretation of acting under the color of law if everyone has the Constitution, the rights to be heard, the rights to equal protection, the right to due process, and yet these judges keep doing that?
Well, color of law, in other words, the official performance of the duties of their office. Judge Manzi has no rights when she is sitting in her robe. A police officer has no rights in the official performance of his duties. All right? And most of your public servants in the official performance of their duties have no rights. It's a privilege to be a judge, to be a police officer, to be an elected official, to be the governor, to be the president. There is no right that is mandated by the Constitution to that job. But we have rights. But the minute a judge surrenders their color of their office, they now become a citizen, and only then do they have rights. But they have to surrender their office. They cannot be a police officer exercising rights. If you're charged with a crime, you have to walk out of that office and now become a citizen, because you can't act under color of law and exercise a right at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. But people don't understand that. I'm sure most of the people here that are watching the show, they're going to go, whoa, what do you mean they have no rights? They have no rights in the performance of their duties, because their duty is a privilege we delegate to them by our rights.
So what do people need to do to file a public bill of address, and with whom do they file a public bill of address to remove a judge?
Well, it's quite simple. I've filed them before. I've received the forms, they're acts and resolve, and you fill out, you know, who you're from the town of whatever, and you put in the judge's name, and on the interior you cite that it's a bill of address, and you can just leave it right at that, and then you sign the back of it. I've gone the portion that I've actually put in why I believe the judge should be removed. You know, I will defend my complaint. After you've done that, you can take and submit it to either the clerk of the House or the clerk of the Senate, and they are mandated to docket it for you. But that's about as far as it gets at this point in time, because it can go to the Senate and to the House, they can bring it up, and they can just do a roll call vote that they're not going to take any action on it, and away it goes. The point being is that a bill of address is a public document. So when I've submitted them before, I've notified all the news media that there's a bill of address against a judge so-and-so for particular reasons, and would you please report on it? Because what I'd like the news media to do is to actually go down to the State House and say, how many bills of address have you gotten this year? How many have you acted on? How many judges have been removed? Don't tell me, Hector, that 99.9% of all the judges we got are perfect because 3 or 4 of them have been removed by a bill of address. That's ridiculous. If a judge does not answer your request, you're exercising a right. They should respond. They should protect that right with every power of their office. But yet Judge Manzi refuses to even talk to you. Well, wait a second. Is that good behavior? No, it's not.
Judge Manzi, would you care to comment on that, or? No comment, Your Honor? Okay. Well, let me ask you, when a person files a bill of address, a public bill of address against a judge, where does that judge stand as a judge?
Well, it's interesting. Again, as with citizens, you are innocent until proven guilty. And the bill of address, though it might prejudice the person, the citizen who submitted it, for the rest of the time the judge sits on the bench and hopefully acts in accordance with the law and does not use that bill of address as a weapon against other people who come in. I just want the judge, I've seen them treated very shabbily in court. I've been treated shabbily in court. I never thought that I would receive the treatment that I had. But I would like to believe that if I took and filed a bill of address against a particular judge, that judge could not then have me in their courtroom, that they would have to recuse themselves because I've made a complaint. It's like if I complained against a police officer, I wouldn't expect that police officer would keep arresting me. If I made a complaint if I was in the military against a superior officer. Hey, you know, these are legitimate complaints. Well, he's still your captain, he's still your major. But the man has violated my rights. Well, innocent until proven guilty. Whoa, whoa, whoa. He's performing a privileged duty. He's violating my rights, not only as a soldier, but my rights as a citizen. That's dangerous. But the bill of address, I would like to see it. I would like them to be made public. How would you like to be able to go down to the State House and they have a billboard down there or a website, 15 bills of address have been submitted this month against Judge so-and-so and so. They're public documents. It's right in the Constitution. You could submit a bill of address. But we're kept ignorant. I feel like a mushroom regarding the machinations of government in Massachusetts.
So the legislators or your senator or your House representative, they're required by law and by the Constitution to submit the public bill of address?
They're supposed to take it up for a vote, but Hector, who confirms judges in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? The legislatures, the Governor's Council. Do you think a legislator is going to take and get a judge angry at him? Remember, they're a legislator in the morning, and you know what they do that afternoon? They're practicing law. Oh, Mr. Montalvo, yeah, the legislature, you supported that bill of address against Justice Schwartz. Guess what, Hector? Denied. Denied. Your motion's denied.
What do you think needs to be done? How do we get cameras in the courtroom? Because if the average Joe is being denied the constitutional right, what about the big media and the little media people? Why are they also being denied? That's a violation of the First Amendment right.
I'm flabbergasted. Years ago, the news media, the newspapers would take and have reporters actually assigned to the different courts. and they'd be, taking shorthand, jotting down, and that information would then appear in the newspaper. Today, we have television cameras, like in the studio here, and they can be about this big, and you can put them around the courtroom, and you can take and show what's going on in there, and you can buy the DVD disc, and you can pump it out live over the internet, and people who are at home in Methuen, in Wilmington, in Lawrence, in Stoughton, in Brockton, they can sit at home and say, hey, what's happening down the court today? Flip on the show and see what's going on. Most courtrooms are only in session for a few hours in the morning, maybe 1 or 2. I've been into courtrooms that haven't opened until 10:30. And then they break for lunch. And then there's second session, a half an hour, hour long. I'm saying that out of an entire week, you might only have 10 hours or less of actual video time. And I think it's perfectly reasonable that you could have a high school student or a college student borrow one of the cameras or operate the cameras at a courtroom and get credit for it. It's for free. Once the camera's been purchased, it's for free after that. And we then take, and we have DVDs, and we take and we have instant recordings for the jurors to watch. And we have projection screens that you could take a television camera and put a document underneath it. And all of a sudden that document is now on the wall for all the jurors to read. And the attorneys can take and point out relative points. But if you look at the courts in Massachusetts, you take out the electric lights, put in some inkwells, John Adams would feel right at home.
Now, I know that everyone has the right to their due process, their privacy, and everything else. And we know that public records, the audio of the court proceedings are always public records. Basically, I like to find out, how is it possible that if all of this is open and the court system claims that they're open, again, the media is left with questions. I mean, let's take, for example, what goes on inside the courtroom. You have the right to face your accuser. You have the right to hear evidence and present evidence for yourself.
Correct.
Yet we see in the courts judges saying, nah, we don't want to use that as evidence. Dismiss that, or a what they call a discovery.
Correct.
Are these judges denying people their due process, their rights to equal protection, the right to face their accuser, if they're throwing away evidence or things that you're entitled to bring into the court to defend
absolutely.
yourself?
It drives me crazy. I've seen this happen time and time again. I have the right to bring forth everything that I believe regards my situation and my defense. No judge knows how to apply it. I had a judge get up in a courtroom, I was making my argument, he got up and walked out. Excuse me? I mean, it's ridiculous. You bring forth everything and let the jurors decide otherwise. Bring forth everything and let the judge decide otherwise. Well, in a bench trial, you're only supposed to go up with the facts that aren't in dispute. But the facts that are in dispute should be heard by a jury. Well, let the jurors hear it. Oh, no, that's not relevant. Based on what, Your Honor? Can you tell me how it's not relevant? I mean, our Massachusetts Constitution, Declaration of Rights, Articles 11 and 12, it says any citizen has the right to bring forth all evidentiary material that is, satisfactory to their defense or their argument. How can a judge arbitrarily say, well, I believe that doesn't apply? Well, are you God? No, they got immunity though, like God, because they're the sovereigns. No, a very valid point, but I mean, most Americans, the people who are watching this in Methuen tonight, they have no idea. Even Justice Manzi, who's to say that she's perfect all the time? She's got immunity though. Judge Manny can make any ruling and not be held accountable for it. Oh, there's an appeals court. Well, excuse me, how much does an appeals court cost? Are you wealthy enough to submit an appeal to the appeals court? Or how about the SJC? Ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. Money, money, money.
And you can go into ratethecourts.com and basically pull up the history of appeals records that individual judges may have. And I know Judge Manzi has a full list on ratethecourts.com. Mr. Schultz, we have 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you want to say in regards to opening the courts to everyone in general, to all the media, people like yourself. And what would you like to say in regards to that?
Well, I understand, the media has a problem right now. Money is short, so they're not going to be taking and putting their cameras into the courtrooms. I can, somebody lost their kitten, they're going to report on that. A lost puppy, there's a fish in the ocean, really good stuff. But no, we're not going to cover the courts. But, once you get elected and we have you in the State House, knock, 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 excuse me, Representative Montalvo, that bill for putting television cameras in the courtroom, knowledge is power, Hector. I've heard that many times before. Knowledge truly is power. And if our courts are broken, even if they're only operating at 99.9%, I want that extra 0.1%. But I can't fix it unless I can see inside. Unless you open the curtains, I don't know what's going on. Most people in Methuen do not know what's going on in the local courthouse. And they're too busy living.
And we see court TV, we had the People's
Yes.
Court on television,
Yes.
we have divorce courts
Yes.
and so on. And we have cameras watching our every move, even outside.
Let's take the Massachusetts courts from the telegraph and bring it into the 21st century where we have video cameras and people can see things. Most Americans, most people today are visual. They see something, something makes sense. I've had this problem before. People have discussions, they get confused in the verbal presentation. And that's the problem. Nobody's going to die. Let's put it on television.
Well, Mr. Schultz, I want to thank you for coming in and discussing this important issue, cameras in the courts, with us. You've been watching Behind the Scenes. I want to thank Donald Schwartz. I want to thank the special appearance by Judge Mary Manzi, even though she was not in the speaking mood today. You've been watching Behind the Scenes with Hector Montalvo. Watch us next time as we go behind the scenes to ask the tough questions, bring you their responses, and we'll let you decide. Thank you for watching.